Welcome to Study Loop.
So this question is basically asking for your understanding of the definition of gross primary productivity. And in order to do that, let's break down this term into its fundamental part. We have gross and we have primary productivity. So let's start out with gross and what this word means in this context, because that will actually allow us to eliminate some of our multiple choice options before we figure out what the next part means. So in this context, gross means all or total. There, you might be familiar with the other term from this chapter, net primary productivity. And in that case, net is like the difference between gross and net is that gross is like the total of everything that's coming in versus net being what you end up with after some sort of deficit or loss in most cases, or maybe a gain. It depends. But anyway, in this case, we're dealing with something that is the total primary productivity available at a given level. Excuse me. And in order to figure that out, let's take a look at our answer options and figure out which ones tend to imply gross versus net primary productivity. So option A fits more under the gross primary productivity headline because it's just a simple rate of energy exchange. It doesn't like limit us. It's just everything that's available. B would be more under net primary productivity because it's energy that is left after the plants have undergone their biological functions. So it's not the total energy that they started out with. So that's out. Same thing with C. That's if entering the trophic level of deer, that would be energy that there's already been some energy that has been lost in the plant itself that's not available to the deer. So that's another example of non-gross primary productivity. So that's out. And then D is, again, the total mass of all plants and animals, which, because its use of the word total, would imply more of the gross headline. So in that case, we're left with options A or D. And now, how do we figure out option A is energy incorporation by plants. Option B, or D, excuse me, is mass of plants and animals in a certain area. How do we figure out which one of these is correct? Well, now we need to turn to our second part of our term, which is primary productivity. And in this case, we have, just making that a little more clear, what do we have here? We have primary, which is like, in this case, primary producers, primary productivity, primary producers. Those in a terrestrial environment would be plants. Primary producers are those that take energy from the sun or from chemicals and are able to make that into their own, into energy for themselves. They don't need to consume other organisms in order to get energy. In this case, plants take in energy from the sun in the form of light energy, convert it with photosynthesis into chemical energy. Now that we have, so primary productivity, which is related to the term primary producers, is related by definition alone on energy transfers and plant life in a terrestrial environment. So in that case, we have gross primary productivity. So the total amount of energy in the primary producer trophic level at a given point in time. And that fits in the most with option A. Because if we look at option D, which was our other one that was left over from the previous part, that's the math that includes mass, which is not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with energy and plants and animals, which would be more than the primary producers. Option A is the correct answer. It is the definition of gross primary productivity. And we can figure that out based on the definitions of gross and on primary productivity and what we can figure out from what we know about primary producers. So in the end, option A is our final answer.